Hello everyone, we're back at the hotel. It's Friday evening, Good Friday. It was difficult to film today because it was very, very busy. It was very, very crowded. It was very windy and bright and just difficult to film. So I didn't get a lot of footage today, but I need to talk to you about several things. Okay, so first of all, the first place we went today was the National Museum of American History. We went to 3 museums today, and of the 3, that one was my personal favorite. Ben, what do you think?
I agree.
Megan agrees. Ben has no opinion. Okay, I liked that one the best. I probably could have spent a lot more time there.
Yeah.
And I would like to go back to that one in the future.
Yeah.
I also think that one had the nicest food facilities that we had seen in a museum so far. We did not get to spend more time there because we had timed tickets for the National Museum of the Holocaust. Is that what it's called? National Holocaust Museum. Yeah, okay. Also, I would say that the Museum of American History was the least crowded, and that was probably because it was in the morning. Mm-hmm. And this is true everywhere you go. The later it is in the day, the busier stuff gets. So if you can get to places when they first open in the morning, it's always going to be more pleasant and less crowded than if you go later in the day. We had a good experience there. First, I'm going to tell you something. Ben has been keeping track on his Fitbit app on his phone how much we walk every day. He actually keeps track of his steps every day. And Ben, how much did we walk the past 2 days?
Is he answering?
He's looking.
13,733 steps, 9.29 miles, 2,205 calories.
Okay, so 9.25 miles? 29 miles, that was today. And yesterday was a little less?
No, the exact same.
Same, yeah.
It was like 9.5 miles.
9.5 miles. So when you come to Washington, D.C., you need to be prepared to do a lot of walking, okay? And if you can't do that, you might want to reconsider a trip to Washington, D.C. All right, because something very important that I need to tell you, well, 2 things. One is the museums here are huge. The museums themselves, which there are lots of them, are very, very large. So just walking around the museums is a lot of walking. The second thing is everything in Washington, D.C. is farther apart than you think it is. It might look like it's not that far from the Tidal Basin to the White House, but it is, okay? It might not look like it's that far from the Washington Monument to the World War II Memorial, but it is. It's really far. Washington, D.C. is a large, spread out city, and we have made this comparison before because we felt this way when we were in Paris. We feel that Washington, D.C. is probably the best example of an American city that's comparable to Paris. It has a lot of the same feel to it in the way it's laid out, the formality of it, just everything about it just feels, which makes sense because Paris is the capital of France and Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States. So I would compare Paris to Washington, D.C. and London to New York in similarity. So, and like ease of getting around and things like that. And similar to how in Paris things are a lot farther apart than you think they are. And even though you can walk in Paris, you're going to be walking like miles and miles. That's how Washington, D.C. is too. The distances are long and far. And so you really can't it takes a while to walk from place to place, and you're going to be doing a lot of walking. That is something you really need to be aware of. We had lunch in the cafeteria at the Museum of Natural History, and then we left there and we walked to
the
National Holocaust Museum. Okay, I gotta warn you, during the day, this was kind of interesting. And it didn't used to be this way. When I used to come to Washington, D.C. when I was younger, before I had kids, this was not a thing. But nowadays, during the day when all the museums and stuff are open, the entire National Mall area is, the streets and everything are lined end to end with two things: tour buses and food trucks. And some of the food trucks are playing loud, obnoxious music. And when we walked across the National Mall from the side that, there's 3 museums in a row there, the Museum of Natural History, the Museum of American History, and the Museum of African American History, and we cut across the mall at that point, right near the Washington Monument, to get over to where the Holocaust Museum and the Bureau of Engraving and Printing are on the other side, and it was just jam-packed with food trucks and people eating and sitting in the grass, and all the garbage cans were overflowing with trash. And all we could think is, I can't imagine wanting to do that. Like, there's no bathrooms anywhere, there's no place to wash your hands. I mean, and the guy, you know, they were out there changing the trash bags and stuff as fast as they could, but it was just so crowded and such a mess. And I just didn't think that was pleasant at all. And that brings up another point. Washington, D.C. is extremely busy in the spring and during the peak cherry blossom time, and during, I would say this because it's Easter week and it's the 4-day weekend for Easter right now. It's the busiest I've ever seen it in the many times I've been to Washington, D.C. I've never seen this many people. It's very difficult even to walk because there's so many people everywhere. There's people blocking the sidewalk, stretching out across the sidewalk. It's busy outside, it's busy inside all the museums. It's just crazy busy. And when we were at the Natural History Museum this afternoon, I said to Megan, and she agreed with me, I said, this is way busier than Disney World. And I'm sure it is. There's way more people here than Disney World. And the thing is you'd think it wouldn't feel like that because this is a big spread out city. But Disney World is actually probably bigger than Washington, D.C., isn't it?
Yeah.
In area?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's very, very crowded. And it's very, very busy. And it's hard to walk at the pace you want to walk because people are going faster or slower than you, or like I said, stopping for no reason and blocking the walkway. And there's lots of that going on inside the museums and outside, or like, you know, little kids, strollers, scooters, all sorts of things getting in your way. It's hard to get around. It was especially bad down by the Tidal Basin where everybody was trying to get pictures of the cherry blossoms. The other thing I would say is you have to really be careful here because there's a lot of uneven surfaces. There's a lot of brick and kind of like gravel, and there's a lot of curbs and stuff of different heights, and there's all these places where kids want to like walk up on the elevated thing, and Megan and I are just like losing our minds. We're like, oh my god, they're gonna fall, you know, like there's just so many places where it looks like somebody's gonna get injured. And then beyond that, when you were down by the Tidal Basin, the cherry trees are low, and there's several places where you're gonna walk right into a tree and hit your head.
There are even signs.
There's even signs warning you. You need to duck. You have to duck under the blossom trees. And then there's roots on the ground and uneven surfaces and packed crowds. And I mean, it's just insane. So you gotta really be careful walking around because it's very busy and it's hazardous. And in addition to that, remember that every one of these buildings, these big majestic buildings, whether it's a government building or a museum, is just totally a whole bunch of concrete steps. And you know how I feel about concrete steps. Okay, so then we went to the Holocaust Museum. Now, it's a very well done museum. And they definitely like kind of in your face right up front tell you you need to take this seriously. And the first thing they do is put you in a rather claustrophobic, creepy elevator.
Oh no, the first thing they do is assign you a person.
Oh yeah, the first thing they do is assign you a person. Do you have those? So the first thing they do is assign you someone who lived during the Holocaust. We got one young woman and one man. and one small child. Okay? Now, interestingly, because we read through the stories of ours, they all survived. These are real people who lived during the Holocaust, all Jewish, yes?
I think so.
I don't know that everybody would be Jewish because obviously many other people besides Jews were killed during the Holocaust, including black people, Roma, homosexual people, disabled people. Lots of other people were killed during the Holocaust besides Jews. But all three of our people that we were assigned, and this was actually the most positive outcome we've ever seen in one of these museums where they assign you a person like this, they all did survive. The one that Ben got, the man, had the most negative outcome. He lost his wife and 2 of his daughters. But Megan and I both ended up moving to the United States, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really interesting. So you have that to kind of go along with the experience. It's a very well done museum in that the entire museum makes you feel very uncomfortable. It's dark and it's one way. You can only go through the experience in one
series of like one
long stretch at a time in one direction. It's narrow and dark and you can't really skip ahead. You can't go backwards. You can't skip to just the parts that you want to see. You have to go through the entire experience in the order that it actually happened. Yeah, so it was kind of frustrating actually because again, very, very, very busy and packed. And there were a lot of places where you wanted to read something and you couldn't because there were so many people in front of the thing that you couldn't see it. And so it was hard. It was a difficult museum to go through. I mean, it was really well done. It was also silent, wasn't it?
It was not silent. There were sound effects and a few videos and like
where people were talking but there's no music, there's no, and we weren't talking because the guy, when he sent us up in the elevator, told us you need to be silent throughout the exhibit.
I mean, I still think people were talking.
We were whispering or talking very quietly to each other occasionally. You are allowed to take photos,
no flash photography.
But no flash photography. And I did take a little bit of video here and there, which I'll have put into this video. But I mean, it's a very well done museum. It's on four levels, and you start at the top and you're gradually working your way down back to the bottom, which is a good way to do it actually. And I really liked the building. The building is obviously either a brand new building that they just built just for that, or they renovated a building. I'm not sure which. Does anybody know? But they designed the building to look like a building that would have existed in Europe during World War II. So it's a really cool building. But the experience again is sobering and rather uncomfortable, and it was kind of a claustrophobic feeling. And you couldn't, like I said, you had to go through the whole thing in order, and so you couldn't really escape any part of it. There was a section near the end where they used to have big piles of shoes, which I've seen that before. I saw something like that in the Imperial War Museum in London, and they had removed the shoes, and it said that they were removed temporarily. So we don't know if something has happened to the shoes or if for some reason they were prompted to remove the shoes. If anybody knows, leave it in a comment, but that was just kind of strange. There were a few spots here and there where there were a few benches where you could sit down, but by the time we were at that museum, our feet had really started to hurt, and I was especially struggling, and we really needed to be able to sit more. But it was very well done, but we compared it to a couple other museums that we've been to. One, like I mentioned, was the Imperial War Museum in London, which is extremely well done and has a Holocaust exhibit. I went through that by myself when I was in London it was when I took Andrew and went with my ex-husband. So it was my husband and me and Andrew was pretty young, not even in middle school yet. So I went through the exhibit by myself while my husband and my son went and looked at other stuff in the museum. And that was very, very well done. And then the other place Megan and I were thinking about was at the World War II Museum in New Orleans, which we were at a year ago, and Megan has been there previously. My dad and my son Andrew have also been there before. That has a very immersive section on the Holocaust, and again gives you like people to follow through and stuff like that. And although that may be through the whole war, but I actually liked both of those places better than this one. So, I mean, it's still an extremely well done museum and I recommend it, but I liked both the Imperial War Museum in London and the World War II Museum in New Orleans better than the Holocaust Museum here in Washington, D.C. The Holocaust Museum here in Washington, D.C., however, is free, but you did need a timed ticket, and our time was 1 o'clock. When we left there, we decided to go over to the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, which is where we print our U.S. currency, which is right next door. We just wanted to just check it out. They distribute tickets for tours. You watch a film first, and then you're up above on an elevated like walkway over the printing floor and get to see everything like happening down below you on the tour. But they distribute the tickets for those tours every day at 8 o'clock in the morning. And obviously we weren't there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by the time we got over there at 2, 3 o'clock or whatever it was, there was a sign that said all the tickets had been distributed for the day. But we were allowed to go in to look at the gift shop. And I kind of put this in there already that there was some exhibits and stuff right in the hallway. They were very friendly and nice at the Bureau of Printing and Engraving and Printing, whichever it is. And there were some fun things to look at in there in the gift shop and stuff. But then we had to go out of the gift shop in the building through the other side, through the back entrance, or I don't know, the opposite way that we went in. And the tidal pool is right there, and all the cherry trees were in bloom, and it was beautiful. And so we decided to walk over there to the tidal basin and walked around and got some great pictures of the cherry blossoms along with everybody else on the planet. Okay, so it was very, very busy. And we did that for a while and really enjoyed that. But again, feet increasingly starting to hurt. And then from there, we had to walk all the way back kind of to where we started, which was a long way, a lot farther than you think, and go to the Museum of Natural History, which is just to the other side of the Museum of American History that we had gone to in the morning. By this time, we were very hot. It was very windy, not good for allergies, by the way, and our feet really, really hurt. So as soon as we got inside the Museum of Natural History, we went straight, we used the bathroom, and then we went straight down to the cafeteria and got snacks and something to drink. And so we actually had a pretty decent lunch and decent breakfast here at the hotel, and so we weren't real hungry, and so we're not actually gonna get dinner tonight because that was plenty. We were mainly thirsty. We were very, very thirsty. I will tell you that your biggest expense here in Washington, D.C., if you're doing it kind of like we are, besides hotel or lodging, if you stay somewhere really central and not out in kind of Virginia or Maryland like we are, your biggest expense is going to be food. So the food in Washington, D.C. is really expensive. So just keep that in mind, that that's probably going to be your most expensive thing. But it's so nice because almost every museum here is free. It's just that some of them might be kind of a trick to get into. When we were at the Natural History Museum, I literally couldn't walk anymore. We did just go upstairs quick, and we all saw the Hope Diamond, which was not as big as I thought it was going to be. So go figure. But anyway, it's actually set in a necklace, which I wasn't expecting. I couldn't walk anymore. My feet were just absolutely in agony, and Ben was really tired too. And Megan just wanted to look at a couple different things. She wanted to look at the gemstones and stuff, and she wanted to look at the ocean part. And so Ben and I went back down to the first floor to the lobby and just sat on a bench and did stuff on our phones while Megan looked at those couple of things. It was getting pretty close to time for the museum to close anyway. When we came out of the museum, something really struck me because it was basically 5:30, and that was that all the tour buses and all the food trucks were gone. So if you want to see the monuments and the National Mall without tour buses and food trucks everywhere, go after 5:30, okay? Go after all the museums have closed, because then there's no reason for them to hang around there. So just keep that in mind, because that might be something you want to consider if you want to get better photos and stuff. The only exceptions to that would be there are some nighttime monuments tour, like we did one when we were here last time in 2021, and then there would still be some tour buses around.